If a man looks at the world when he is 50, the same way he looked at it when he was 20, and it hasn't changed, then he has just wasted 30 years of his life. This quote is accredited to Muhammad Ali. And it's a great quote because honestly, it actually deals with a lot of the talking points that I make on this channel, whether you realize it or not. There's a lot of younger collectors and investors that are operating in this market that literally criticize my channel because they think, look at what Pokemon is doing right now in the overall market in 2023. Pokemon's always going to be a good investment. Pokemon's always going to go up in value. I can always buy a factory sealed Pokemon product, put it away in a safe place, and it's going to always go up in value. I'm here to tell you that is not how these markets work over the long term, nor is it how these markets were designed to work over the long term. If we get in my DeLorean time machine and we go back to the 1980s, we go back to the 1990s, if I would give you insight into what a lot of the experts in the overall antiques and collectibles trade thought was going to be popular and collected in the next 10, 20, and 30 years, are you aware that almost none of them could have predicted that you guys would be collecting Pokemon cards today? Because Pokemon didn't come out, at least in the US, until the late 1990s. You have to understand, guys, that it is very, very difficult and painful for me that some of you younger guys go through life thinking this is the way life is, this is the way it's always going to be, this is the way these markets work, this is the way they're always going to operate. That is 100% false. And you, as you grow as a person, as you gain more experience, you're going to understand that your perspective and how you view a lot of these markets, how you have your own priorities and goals, all of that's going to change as you get older. You know, I can speak to this directly because I'm 46. When I look back on my life, I am starting to realize that there's more years behind me than there are ahead of me. And that has a profound impact on my priorities, my goals, my relationships, who I choose to spend time with, who I choose to have sex with, who I choose to have relations with. All that comes into play as a result of that perspective that has changed over time. If I were to look at myself at the age of 26, now that I'm 46, I would not most likely recognize that individual. That's how much I changed just in that 20-year time frame. That's why when I look at the demographics of this particular YouTube channel, 50% of my viewing audience is younger than me. Another 50% is older than me. And when I interact with a lot of you younger guys, you have yet to develop that type of mindset that this too will pass. I'm going to eventually change. I'm going to move on. I'm going to have a different perspective. That doesn't mean, guys, that you're going to give up the things that you like. If you're in your 20s and you like video games, chances are, most likely, in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, you're still going to like video games. Does that mean you're going to spend X number of time playing them? No, I like video games. I very rarely play them anymore. I just don't have the time. So your perspective and your life is going to change as you get older. Now, where am I going with this? Well, if you watch the video that I did, the introduction to the 5 Ds of the antiques and collectibles trade, I told you that the 5 Ds of the antiques and collectibles trade are divorce, disease, debt, downsizing, and death. I know, not happy topics to talk about on a regular basis. I get it. Very depressing, very dark, very disturbing. Yes, I know. But just bear with me here. I did also tell you in that video that, unfortunately, for some of you guys that have to watch all these videos, I am going to be doing an individual video on each one of these talking points and how it relates to investing in the antiques and collectibles trade. It's very important because you got to remember the golden rule. In capitalism, someone's misfortune is usually someone else's financial opportunity. So that means if you don't prepare properly, your collection is going to be your misfortune, and it's going to end up being someone else's financial opportunity. Think of it that way, gentlemen. Now, before we go any further, I don't want to start off too dark here. So rather than talk about disease, debt, or death, or even divorce, I'm going to start off talking about downsizing. Downsizing is one of the few things on this list that could be both positive and or negative. And that's why we're going to start there. It's more neutral than talking about disease, debt, and death. Now, divorce as well. Divorce can be positive and or negative. For instance, if you're somebody, you come home from work and you find out that your wife or your girlfriend is cheating on you, or vice versa, you're a young lady, you come home from work and you find out that your husband is cheating on you, it may behoove you to get a divorce. And for you, not being involved in that relationship anymore, that could be a very positive experience. But if you're somebody who's doing everything right and somebody comes to you and says, hey, I don't want to be married to you anymore, that can obviously be a very painful, it could be a very negative experience. So unlike a lot of the other topics on this list, both downsizing and divorce have positive and negative connotations with both of them. So I am going to start talking about downsizing in this particular video. Now, when we think of downsizing, usually people think when they hear the term downsizing that, oh, somebody's up there in age, maybe they're in their 70s, maybe they made it to their early 80s. And now they're thinking of moving in to a smaller house, smaller apartment. Maybe they're going to go to an old folks home. Maybe they're going to go to a retirement community, and they need to get rid of all the collections, all the items that they accumulated over the years, because they want to make sure that their heirs, their children, their grandkids, whoever it is, isn't left cleaning up that mess. That, in my opinion, is a form of positive downsizing. That is the responsible thing to do if you are in that predicament, in my opinion. Now, you may disagree with that. You may say, fuck my kids, fuck my grandkids. I'm going to the grave with all this stuff. And if you've watched American Pickers, if you watch enough episodes of that, it almost is like watching an episode of Hoarders. Some of those individuals are going to die with a massive mess left behind, if you know what I mean. If you've watched any of those episodes, you know what individuals those are. Those are your diehard collector hoarder types. Most of us are hopefully not on that end of the spectrum. I think most of you guys, as you get older, you're going to become more financially responsible. You're not going to put all your money in Pokemon cards, cryptocurrency, and stupid shit that you shouldn't be buying in the first place in most cases. Again, if you're going to invest or attempt to invest, you should first start to invest in a well-diversified financial portfolio rooted in my opinion, index-based mutual funds for the long term. You can then start to diversify in antiques, collectibles, gold, silver, cryptocurrency. God bless you if you do. I hate cryptocurrency. You guys know my opinion on that. However, another reason that somebody may downsize, and let's walk through this scenario as well. Let's say that you're somebody in your 30s or 40s. Maybe you're my age. And maybe you get a call and somebody says to you, hey, we have an excellent job opportunity for you, but you're going to have to move into the city. And you may think about it and you go, well, gee, I live in the suburbs. I have a beautiful 4-bedroom estate and all of my rooms are packed with antiques, collectibles, video games, Lego sets, whatever it is, comic books, pop culture collectibles. And the person on the other end of the phone says, well, we're going to double your salary. Whatever you make right now, we're going to double it. I guarantee you would take that opportunity. Now, the thing you got to understand, though, is if you want to live in a good part of a big city, you're going to pay a fortune to do so. Rents are through the roof. If you choose to buy a house in the city, mortgages in most part are through the roof. And there are other expenses involved with that. You know, I've dated very successful high-maintenance women that live in Rittenhouse, that live in Chestnut Hill, those expensive areas in Philadelphia. And I can tell you firsthand, in certain instances, I remember I was dating one chick that paid close to $5,000 per month in rent for a 2-bedroom luxurious apartment. And by luxurious, it really wasn't that luxurious for what you could get for that in the suburbs or moving out of the city. You got to remember, in certain cities, like I talk about Philadelphia because that's the city that I'm closest to. If you go in Rittenhouse, if you go in Chestnut Hill, it's not uncommon to be able to buy a house for like $1.4 million. And you think for $1.4 million, that must be an incredible house. No, it's not an incredible house. It's just location, location, location. So you have to understand, if you're going from the suburbs into the city, you're going to have to downsize. That is not necessarily a bad thing if you are making significantly more money, or you're working a job that you like, you're getting a lot of experience. You're starting to come into your own, as they would say. Now, what could be a negative example of this? Well, I'm going to go dark here, so please forgive me, guys. Let's suppose that you're not feeling well. You go to the doctor. Doctor sends you to a specialist, and tests come back that you have an incurable and inoperable form of cancer. And doctor looks at you and he says, you know, it's hard to gauge how long you have. You probably have 3 to 4 years to live. In that case, you're going to want to get your affairs in order. At some point, it would behoove you to, if you are a hardcore collector, let go of these items simply due to the fact that you know the value of these particular items. You know what they're worth. You know what you can get for them on the open market. Or if you leave that responsibility to your heirs, they could potentially get taken advantage of. They could potentially make a bad decision that could cost them thousands, if not in some cases, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost revenue. So that is an example of a negative experience when it comes to downsizing. But when we talk about downsizing in general, it is not always negative, guys. Understand that. Just like it's not always positive. It's not always what you envision in your mind. You know, the typical family that raised their kids and now they want to move to an old folks home. They choose to downsize. And as a result, they want to live happily ever after and just travel in their golden years. It usually also doesn't work out to that extreme either. Now, there is an excellent book I can recommend if you do want to learn about liquidating an estate. And always, if you are going to get this book, if you are going to read it, please take it for a grain of salt. Please do your own research as well. This particular book has been out for quite some time. It is called Liquidating an Estate. It is actually called How to Sell a Lifetime of Stuff, Make Some Cash, and Live to Tell About It. This particular book is written by Martin Codina. You could probably get a used copy of this on eBay or Amazon for just a couple of bucks today if you can find it. I do want to say this book is out of print, I believe, but it does have a lot of interesting tips on how to think about liquidating an estate, liquidating a mass era of collections. Some of you guys collect multiple items, multiple artifacts. This will pretty much help you on your quest. And honestly, if you run like a resale business on the side, some of you guys that watch my channel, I know you're involved in eBay thrifters. I would also recommend this book just so that you have an idea of how this operates, because it's going to actually give you strategies that will also help you if you do run a side business in the antiques and collectibles trade. Again, the book is called Liquidating an Estate, and it is by Martin Codina. So you might want to check this out wherever you can find used books. With that being said, I'm going to end this particular segment here. I think that you all understand the concept of downsizing, how it's not always a positive experience. It's not always a negative experience, but it could potentially be one or either. So you guys need to understand that. This is vital for you understanding. If you are going to invest in antiques and collectibles over the long term, you got to know how to mitigate risk. And one way you can mitigate risk is by downsizing before you, unfortunately, die. Thanks for watching and have a great night.